Hey y'all, it's your girl Lauren Nicole back with another book review, and yes, there will be spoilers. Today we're talking about a book called These Ghosts Are Family by Maisy Card. And this one's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be as detailed because this book had so many details, so many twists and turns that you really just have to read it for yourself. But the premise of the book is that we are following an interconnected network of Jamaican immigrants and their family members. So we start with a man who fakes his death while working in the UK. And so his family presumes that he has passed away. He thinks that this is going to be to the best interest of his family because his wife that he married was from a well-to-do family. He was from a lower class, and she was pushing him very, very hard because she married for potential at the expense of her inheritance. So he figured he would leave behind his wife, his son, and his daughter, and that with his life insurance money that his wife would be able to move on, and so would he. He ends up remarrying and moving to New York City. When we meet him, he is getting ready to pass away, and he has learned that his first daughter, who has thought him dead her entire life, is living in New York City and working as a CNA or a home health aide. He calls her agency and requests her specifically to come to his home. So she thinks that she is going to the house of an elderly patient to care for him towards the end of his life, only for him to reveal to her that he is her father. He has also had another child from this second marriage, but this daughter is a drug addict who just kind of never got her life together, and she has a daughter. So his granddaughter is also living in the family home. He has a business, both a restaurant and a store, and really just went on about his life. We also find out a little bit later in the story that he had another daughter by cheating on his second wife. But in the course of the story, we bounce between characters. So we go back to his first wife. We get a perspective of all three daughters at a point. We get a perspective of his son. We go back and forth in time from the past to the future to see how different people are connected, what their life was like in Jamaica, and where their life took them, whether they landed in the UK or whether they landed in New York City, which seems to be the common meeting ground. We even go all the way back in time to a plantation owner that owned the family and was ultimately the source of wealth of the first wife, who forewent her inheritance to marry the first character that we're introduced to. And listen, when I tell you there are so many names, I honestly can't even remember them all. There's so many moving parts. You really have to read this. You really have to read this book to get the twists and the turns. I will say it opened up my understanding about people who immigrate from one country and one society to America specifically, and some of the challenges that arise from people who are accustomed to operating in a level of their home country's class system and then entering into America's class system. That was very eye-opening. I love the way that the author touched on that. We even get a feel for it's a juxtaposition of race, class, some of the horrific elements of slavery and the descendants of that, and how different people's lives are affected and how they pan out. And so there's a character in the book who is a young white woman whose family, her father is wealthy. And he is towards the end of his life. He hands her a journal. This is a family journal, and it ends up being a journal of the plantation owner who owned the family back in Jamaica. And she works in the museum space, and she is interested in history. and she feels conflicted about the content of the book because what led her to her father giving her that book was that she had taken a DNA test. And in taking that DNA test, she found Black relatives, but she was very, very confused as to how would be related to Black people. And so her father had to tell her about this connection. And so she goes to Jamaica in search of answers. She wanted to touch ground. She wanted to feel the land. And the town where her ancestor owned land in was still present when she went to go visit. And as she goes to visit, she meets the son, the first son of the original character who faked his death and ultimately ends up marrying him. And he moves to New York City. And so everyone has skeletons in their closet. Everyone has a story to tell, if you will. And some people have stories that they would rather not tell, or stories, or they're unable to defend themselves once they have passed. So you have all of these children, adult children, who have built their lives, or their lives have been affected in one way or another by the actions of the adults around them. And there's also an element of spirituality throughout the text. So there are references to like superstitions and even ghosts. So in that original opening scene where we learn about this man who has assumed the identity of another man, and he's living in New York City and moved on with his life, completely fine with his previous family, thinking that he has passed. In his elder age, his second wife had passed, and as he's prepared to tell his two daughters and granddaughter what he did, so he wanted to do a deathbed confession. And so as he's preparing to do this, one of the characters in the room is the spirit of the first wife, who is very angry that he has had the nerve to do this all this time. So it's a very, very interesting book, very, very interesting story. And like I said, it's one you have to read on your own because it's far too much to go through. We go through the lovers that the first wife takes and the houseboy that she ultimately took advantage of and had taken advantage of for the majority of his life, and then left him nothing in her death. And as he is panicking and spazzing, just knowing that deep down in some way she loved him, and how could she leave him nothing? He kidnaps 3 little girls at her funeral. They're never to be found. And then at the end, there's references to these girls becoming vampires along the way. It is a ride. And so, to Maisy Card, very, very interesting body of work. And so that's my review of These Ghosts Are Family. And I definitely gave you some spoilers. So go check it out. Comment below and tell me what you think about it.